Welcome to M2 Techcast.
Hey, it's Matt Roush.
And Mike Brennan.
And we're back with another segment of the M2 Techcast, and we have our regular guest with us this afternoon. He was going to be in studio, but he's a little bit under the weather, so we're going to talk to him on the phone from a safe distance.
Yes, keep you at arm's length,
Yes.
Richard.
It is Richard Stiennon, CEO of IT-Harvest and cybersecurity expert. Richard, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. And more like death warmed over than under the weather.
Okay,
yes.
well, what Mike has written down here for our show notes for you is topics to turn your hair white. Well, a lot of mine already is white.
And mine too.
Yeah, but even whiter, I guess. Topics to turn the last few white. What do you have for us this month? What's the latest and greatest?
So one interesting thing, if you're in business, is to worry about various privacy legislation that's being passed. Mm-hmm. And the first to fall here in the United States is the California CCPA, California Consumer Privacy Act.
Okay.
And it goes into effect January 1st. It has a long history of it been put out there and then tabled by one party or the other, and then an activist threatened to he had enough signatures to put it on a referendum. And there's big issues in California. Once something's on a referendum, you can't amend the act until without having another referendum, which is very expensive and cumbersome and not the representative government way. So the legislation in California just passed it last year. They just said, let's just throw something together quick, and they got the guy who was organizing the grassroots campaign to pull out. And so they got something on the books, which goes into effect January 1st. And it is unclear what it intends to do and how it's going to be enforced. It is modeled slightly after the General Data Protection Act in the EU. It luckily has some carve-outs, so most of us don't have to worry about it. If you have to be a business that is over 25 million in revenue, or has half your revenue come from selling consumer data. So if you're a marketing data company, you'd worry about this. But for the rest of us,
yeah, 25 million is a tough threshold, so we're well under that.
I was going to say, Mike, you're approaching that, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, 25 million.
Yeah, you'll be there next year, so you should hire an attorney, Mike.
Yeah.
So what is this? What is this act going to require people to do?
So basically, it's make a good effort to secure data, and so it's a little nebulous, but probably better than GDPR, which says you will use state-of-the-art security, which is more nebulous, but a little harder to prove that you're doing. And there'll be fines up to $700 per incident. So if you lost 1,000 records or had them breached or they were stolen from you or whatever, you'd be liable for $700,000 in fines. So it can add up very, very quickly. And so you have to be compliant with this in 3 weeks, but nobody the
knows what that means, right?
Yeah, the law requires the Attorney General of California to, define how it's going to be enforced and what the criteria are going to be, and all the things that you usually expect from a new regulation to be spelled out. But it gives us the Attorney General until the end of June to publish that. But it also authorizes him to enforce the act July 1st. So he could easily produce a whole bunch of requirements at the end of June and file a bunch of suits and actions the very next day. So people are scrambling. They're trying to, line up and know that they're okay, I guess, for a regulation that can be very nasty. Obviously, we know how this works. The state attorney general is going to go after the big guys, and they've got Google, Facebook, Apple.
Those are big ones.
And enough of they've got those to look at and huge fines associated that they could apply to those if they're in violation of this. It basically means when you collect data, you've got to say what the collection purpose is for, and then you have to allow, similar to GDPR, allow a consumer to say, hey, I don't want you to have my data, please remove it. But that alone is a very difficult process. From my years at Blanco Technology, I know erasing data is not as simple as you think. You can't just, delete a file. The data is all over the place. So it's, and besides that, you have to prove that you deleted it. And that alone means a whole data management solution that's got to be overlaid on top of everything that you're doing already.
Well, you got to wonder with Facebook, I've lost track of how many billions of accounts they have. What a fine that could be, huh?
Yeah, and they're already seeing enforcement actions in Europe.
Well, it sounds like making best efforts. Nobody knows what that is until a court tells you what it is. Somebody's going to have to sue or be sued to get the answer.
Yeah.
It reminds me of there was a pretty critical landmark case against Comerica here in Michigan, and so a woman who had all of her money stolen from her account, and Comerica argued that, well, it wasn't their fault. She let somebody steal her username and password. She went to court, and all it came down to was Comerica following best practices. And so expert witnesses came in, et cetera. And yet they had to prove that what they were doing was at least as good as everybody else in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
So but that takes years to determine. And it's just you don't want to get into a lawsuit and going into appeals over something like this because it's very expensive and time-consuming.
Absolutely. You also wanted to talk about a new book from Andy Greenberg of Wired called Sandworm. What's that all about?
Yeah, Andy Greenberg, came up from the ranks at Forbes. As a matter of fact, he was my original editor for my columns at Forbes. And so he got into, the security world probably 2008 timeframe, and then he moved over to Wired, and now he's the top senior editor there for technology and security. And he started tracking this group that arose out of the GRU, which is a military intelligence unit in Russia.
Right.
And he tracked it. The story really begins with power outages in Ukraine, Christmas of 2015, when about a third of Ukraine's power systems were shut down. And it was, very effective, and I could use the word sophisticated, honestly, here, attack against their power grids that used, basically gave the attacker the ability to log in as if they were the power grid controller and literally shut off circuits, which they would do. And as people brought them back online, these guys still had control, so they'd shut them off again. And finally, we've been waiting for an attack like that for a decade, right? Because people, even in 2000, the defense agencies had run an experiment to see if you could do that to a power generator, and demonstrated that, they could. And there's a film you can see on YouTube if you can find it. It's under Project Aurora. And you see this big, huge diesel generator basically start rattling around and smoking and totally destroying its bearings because of the attack over the wires. So it took, from 2000 to 2015 for there to be an example of that happening in the wild, and it occurred against Ukraine. And it's always been frustrating to me. I always predicted, this is going to happen. And when it does, the U.S. power grid is going to say, yeah, but that was, country X. That will never happen here. And that's exactly what happened. There was no, oh my God, the sky is falling, we have to revamp our security across the board. Nothing, no increased spending, nothing. It took about, I think, 15 months for the White House to acknowledge that the attack on the grid had happened and that it could happen here. There were ancillary reports that the exact same attackers, Sandworm, had infiltrated most of the U.S. power grid and used some of the same software, not to do damage necessarily, but obviously we're scoping out and doing reconnaissance on U.S. power grid systems.
Lovely.
And then a year later, another power grid attack using even more sophisticated methodologies occurred in Ukraine. And then, of course, the biggest attack in history, measured in losses, was the famous NotPetya attack. And Andy Greenberg's probably made his name writing that article up, where he talks about the destruction at the container shipping company Maersk in Amsterdam. And that attack started with a single infected machine on Maersk's network in Odessa, and spread to the entire Maersk network around the world in a matter of hours, very, very short time frame, and basically destroyed all those systems that it infected, just wiped their disks completely. And Maersk was down for about 10 days. And the chairman of the board went to Davos and revealed that, it cost them $250 million in downtime. But the damage just spread throughout the world because it shut down the container shipping facilities that were controlled, about 6 of them around the world. And, there were reports of trucks not being able to get checked in because the barcode scanners wouldn't work and they couldn't do anything. And so there were lines of trucks at the shipping facilities that were miles long. And everybody was scrambling, especially with their perishable goods, to find another shipper. Without their computer systems, they couldn't ship.
So much for just-in-time delivery, yes.
Exactly. When you rely on your supply chain to keep everything moving, you've got to account for the fact that the supply chain might just stop. And that's exactly what happened. And so now we've seen what can happen. Shouldn't we be taking measures to prevent it from happening, again, and especially here?
Yeah, absolutely. Got about 2 minutes left. Let's talk real quickly about your Security Yearbook 2020 that you're coming out with.
Yeah, your book. Plug your book, not somebody else's.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was a good time to talk about it since it's going to the printers today.
Oh, cool.
I finished the manuscript a week ago, and it's been through editing, and I had somebody add all the citations to the proper formats, and now it's been typeset and all the artwork done. So the printer's getting it today, and then so it should be in my warehouse by February 1st, and then I can get it to the book launch at RSA on February 24th. So we're going to have a big launch and a book signing and all that good stuff. I'll probably do something locally here in Michigan as well, because I'm going to have thousands of hardcover books in a warehouse that I'll have to figure out how to move as quickly as possible.
All right. Can you get them online? Is that part of your plan?
Yeah. You'll be able to get an ebook version. It won't, it'll be cumbersome to read, especially the directory portion. But that will be available mid-year. I'm going to do the classic publisher rollout, hardcover first, and then softcover and ebook at the same time. So that will roll out about the time that I'm going to print again with next year's Security Yearbook. So it's a history of the IT security industry starting back in roughly 1995 when Checkpoint Software got its big start till now. So we've got pretty close to a 25-year history. And then every year there's a lot more history, because this industry is growing at 24% a year. So
yeah, absolutely.
A lot happens every single year that has to be reported on.
All right, Richard, let's have the website where people can reach those.
Yeah, security-yearbook.com. And starting in January, that website will have all the updates that are happening in the year, so that it'll be easy for me to collate and pontificate on those updates at the end of the year.
All right. Thanks very much, cybersecurity expert and CEO of IT-Harvest, Richard Stiennon. Once again, that website, security-yearbook.com. Thanks for being with us today.
Four-year students love Lawrence Technological University's thriving campus life. But LTU has always met non-traditional students' needs, too. Lawrence Tech offers over 100 degree and certificate programs that can get adult students started. or back on track. And most of our classes are conveniently offered evenings at our beautiful Southfield campus or online, so you can balance your social, family, and work life even while you power up your career. Lawrence Tech, where Blue Devils dare.